Hello and welcome back to Bootleg Macro, your number one source for the most active stocks traded in the US stock market. Today we're going to be looking at what has been a recurring theme, MULN. This is again the most active ticker traded on FinViz today. Looking at the actual activity, we can see that there was another down day where we actually opened up at 14 cents and we closed below 12. Now I only see the two decimal places, so I see that it closed at 12 cents, but I know it actually closed a little bit lower at 11 and then additional change. Now this is probably what they call like a trip 4, where you're starting to see 4 individual digits after the decimal place just because the price keeps dropping. So I hope for the people who watch this that they've not only been short, but they've held short, because it looks like the move that we've seen from here at the beginning of February now into the middle of March, that's been epic. It's been the type of move that's probably changed some lives and made a ton of people a ton of money if they've been able to get a borrow on this. One of the things I want to look at today, because I can tell that with the market moving, and when I say the market, I mean the SPY, the Russell, the Qs, or the NASDAQ, as we're seeing movement down in those larger indices, it's going to drag down these penny stocks. It's going to drag down the small, highly speculative, highly risky assets that exist in the market, because when people are afraid of owning Apple or Amazon or Netflix or Google or Microsoft, they damn sure are afraid of owning MULN, the automotive company, which is putting out press releases to potentially for a new car or whatever it is that they're doing. I'm going to go ahead and take a look here at the daily fast indicator, as what is my favorite thing to look at directly right away. It looks like we're down at 33%. And I bring this up because 33% is incredibly tough to have from a bullish sentiment perspective. You generally can't get below 40%, similar to what was going on here in December, and you can't really get below 40% similar to what was going on in October without having an aggressive rebound like we saw in October and like we saw into the middle of December. What I want to do is a little bit different here, is I actually want to look at the correlation between MULN and the SPY overall. Let's go ahead and just look at where I'm going to see this. On this specific setup here, on this trade card for MULN, as we're looking at it, we can see how much it's down for the month, the day of the week. The thing I want to highlight here is this VIX correlation. What I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to change the VIX correlation, and I'm going to change it to be the SPY. Then I'm going to go ahead and go to my daily. I'm going to go over here to where I have the VIX, and I'm actually just going to type in SPY. Now that we see that this has changed, one of the things that I'm going to do is go back, look at the trade card, and now we're going to see that we have the correlation to the SPY, and this is what makes it important. Seeing that MULN has a correlation of 60%, and currently it looks like it's falling a little bit because it's had a pretty high correlation up here, that it's at 60% right now to the SPY, we really want to pay attention to what's going on in the SPY. I'm going to go ahead and change and look at the Qs as well, see if that's got a higher percentage. So MULN actually has a negative correlation to the Qs, which we can see here. It's actually fallen. This is a correlation. It says to the VIX, but we know that we've just changed it. So we can see that it's actually got a negative correlation to the Qs. So when the Qs are dropping, we actually would expect MULN to be going up. But when the SPY is dropping, we currently would be expecting MULN to be going with it, to be dropping as well. So look at the small caps. So MULN and the small caps have a 91%. So you really want to look at what's going on with IWM. When IWM is down, because we can even see here that the correlation is actually rising between MULN and IWM. So we really want to be conscious about what's going on. So that's actually probably the best indication when it comes to an individual indice, is what is happening in small caps. And something that kind of sticks out to me as I think about this now too is I've got my own signals that are generated. Normally what I'll look at is the volatility, but I know I've done this video a few different times, so go check out my previous videos. But I'm going to go ahead and look at what the signals are saying. So these are the general trading signals that I'll see. So any ticker that I change, it automatically will update. MULN has been giving sell signals, big bear signals, small bear signals, and no bullish signals. Generally, what I'm going to want to see is a bunch of key 3 indicators. That's what I like to see, is the key 3 indicators here actually populating, as well as getting these additional sell signals or the big bears or the falling peaks. But when you've had such strong recent sell signals, when I've had 5 on the key 3 here, then I've had 4, and we had none of these key 3 bulls, and we had only sell signals, that was the signal. I'm going to go ahead and change this back for the VIX, so that from the overall perspective, I can see when I look at this trade ticker. MULN, to be very honest, as I look at it right now, I would be so concerned and so scared if I was part of it, if I wasn't short. And now looking at this volatility here, what we can see is that volatility is starting to fall, and actually volatility was rising, or at least is positive, while correlation is aggressively negative. So if you've watched any of my videos before, one of the things that I try to always call out is that if volatility is rising or positive and correlation is negative, price is going to fall. So what we would expect here is that if volatility is actually going to start rolling over and start falling, because it generally will have kind of these wave movements to it, correlation is this negative, correlation is probably going to start rising. And we can look at correlation here. This is the volatility correlation. What we can see is if it gets above this red line and starts to rise while volatility is falling, you're going to be in a situation that's going to get a little sticky for MULN. I'd be a little concerned. Let's go ahead and look at what we have for the non-sentiment trade range. We're damn near the bottom. Looks like the bottom of this is at 10 cents. So maybe when we get down there, there's an opportunity. You can see that at the sentiment-based trade range, the bottom is at 9 cents because the volatility is taking it that much lower. The top is at 22 cents. That'd be amazing if you could get there from this level, because that would be a great move from 11 cents to 22 cents. You'd be at 100% gain. The daily sentiment indicator, again, this isn't the fast one. We're at 32%. I've honestly never really seen this. I'm actually going to do something that shows you how aggressive this is, because there's one stock that actually exhibits very similar behavior, and that's Tesla. Let's go ahead and just quickly look at Tesla, because I want you to see what this is going to look like on the daily sentiment indicator. Now, this is Tesla on the daily sentiment indicator, and we can see the aggressive moves. We're talking at the very beginning of the year on the 9th. This thing was at 34% bullishness. Let's guess where the 9th was. The 9th was right here. This is when this thing had fallen from over $300 down to a low of 117. That's how you can look at the type of bullish sentiment when you're looking at this bearishness. So when bullishness gets down to 34%, that's really what it really means to you at the time is 65% or 66% bearishness in the stock. That is an indication that you have essentially hit a bottom, which is what makes this kind of look that we're seeing in MULN even more shocking. And I'll go back to it. It makes it even more shocking. As we can see now with MULN back here, we're down at 32%. We are at 67, almost 68% bearishness in MULN. And just like we looked at when it comes to how Tesla was operating when it got down to 34%, that's a really low level. So what we'd expect based on the moves that we now know to look at for MULN, what we really want to check out is IWM, because IWM, with having a 91% correlation to MULN, is going to give you the keys to what is possibly the future. So let's go ahead and look at IWM. So IWM, now that we can see it, this actually already has hit a low of 35% in the very middle of March. That was probably a very low day. If we look here on the 15th, yeah, that was a day where we had essentially started kind of what looks like bottom here. Today was a very ugly day too, though. So don't get it confused that we couldn't go back down. Since today, with the movement that we've seen, we got to 41% bullishness. We could still drop below, could drop back down to 35% bullishness, but it's pretty difficult. Now, if we look at the ultra fast for the IWM, we can see this is the 14th, the 15th, we were down at 30, 35, 36%. Started to rise a little bit. You actually did see these are some pretty good moves off of what looks like the close at 171. We did hit a close of 176 yesterday. Obviously, today was an important day because we had the Federal Reserve announcing its brand new rate hike, which everybody loves those. Janet Yellen came out and said that we are not going to protect all of the depositors across the U.S., which scared the crap out of everyone. Pretty much made everyone scared of bank stocks. So if we look at what's happening in the IWM, this is going to be a great indication of how we can pay attention to what might happen in MULN. And since MULN's sentiment-based trade range is generally not good because it's so inexpensive in terms of it being pennies, this is what it would look like when you get to actually see it on a reasonable ticker. So we can see here on IWM, we do have bearish sentiment. We've had it since the 22nd of February. We've had go short signals, it looks like, since the very beginning of March, and most recently the 9th of March, and it's continued. You can see the prices continue to collapse. We look at the non-sentiment based trade range here on IWM. Again, I'm bringing this up because it has a 91% correlation to MULN. We can see it's at the bottom of its range. We look at volatility. Not shocking and not surprising that volatility on IWM looks almost identical in terms of the essentially correlation is negative and the volatility is rising, as we saw in MULN. And that's really the power of understanding what you're looking at, is that if you can start to see similar patterns, it's really easy to start to understand what's going to happen, because it's no different than understanding that you're always going to get essentially these waves of volatility. It's going to rise up from nowhere, crest, and then it's going to fall back down. It all depends on what correlation is going to do. And we'll go ahead and look at correlation here on IWM because it's incredibly negative. While we know that volatility is essentially either peaking, it's either raising a little bit, but it's slowing down, or it's cresting. So this is most likely going to hit a bottom and then probably start to rise similar to what it did here in the beginning of January, where the correlation is actually correlated to the volatility. So price will fall as volatility falls. And one of the things that I believe, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, is that volatility, when we are seeing falling volatility, when we are seeing this here, this is actually an indication of what true trend is like. When we see falling volatility, that's when we're getting what trend is for that moment. When we're seeing falling volatility, we're getting trend at that moment. See, so this is where the middle of November into the very end of December, or the middle of December, it looks like on the 15th, that was when we started to see real trend. So if I guess, I'll guess that we were here at the beginning of December and we were here in the middle of December, because the general market movement that I'm seeing right now, if I look at it, is that I've got a falling bear from the weekly. So I've got bearish sentiment inside of IWM, and most likely that's what we're going to see inside of MULN as well. So that's just a daily review of what is the most active ticker. I went a little bit deeper by looking at Tesla, by looking at its correlation to IWM, showing you how easily I can switch between the Qs and the SPY or any individual ticker. Just wanted to make this quick little video to give you an idea of what to expect from MULN. This has been another edition of the Daily Active YouTube show from Bootleg Macro. Like and subscribe, leave a comment below. I wish you nothing but the best, and keep your stops tight.